Okay, what I have here, other than a cat. Come on, go away. Go away. Don't sit here. Come on, go over there. Right, what I've got here is I've got a nice old mantle clock. And if you see the plaque on the bottom, if it's readable, it says presented to Mr. F.A. Pluck on the occasion of his wedding, 25th of September 1912, with sincerest wishes from the postmaster and indoor staff at Bromley Post Office, is what it says there. Right, so 1912, that's the same year that the Titanic sunk. It's a few months after. Yeah, so it's an old mantle clock. It's a chiming one, and you wind it up with two keys. One's for the winding up the chiming mechanism, and the other one's just for the clock mechanism. If I wind this round to past, it'll probably chime. And it basically chimes. It's all mechanical clockwork, as a clock was in 1912, and it chimes on this metal ring here. If I do that, it'll probably operate the mechanism like so. Anyway, it came with some pendulum parts. It came with this huge brass pendulum here, which you hang on, and basically it's the wrong one. And I've been trying to get the thing to work correctly. You can see the pendulum's swinging far too fast at the moment. But if you clip this in and you rotate it, I'll give it a bit of a swing, you can see the pendulum will swing at a much lower rate. So I've been playing around adding plasticine to the bottom of the pendulum. But the problem is, by the time I've added enough plasticine to make the pendulum swing slow enough to nearly keep the correct time, it stops swinging. At the moment I've not got the clock wound very well, because I've been running the mechanism down. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to, unfortunately, change it to an electric mechanism, to a battery one. A lot of people will moan and say I shouldn't have been changing it over to battery, but the way the mechanism looks to come out of this looks pretty straightforward. Basically, take the fingers off on the front, and then there's two brass screws here which you can unscrew, or two brass nuts, nailed nuts I should say, and the mechanism should lift out quite simply. After I've changed the mechanism over, I may put this striker back in, even though it won't work anymore, but just for sort of luck, when you open the back you'll see the original striker is still in there. or chime, as I suppose I should call it, not striker, the chime. Right, now to strip it down from the front, you basically take out a little pin there and the fingers will slide off. So once the fingers have slid off, you basically just undo the two nailed nuts inside and the mechanism should come out. So quite a simple thing to do. Somewhere I think it had the make of the mechanism, but I can't see it at the moment. Anyway, I'm going to get on with doing this. But first of all, I will show you the part which are going in. Okay, so what we have is we have the standard sort of clock mechanism. This is known as, I think it's a 12 treble 8 mechanism, which you can purchase on eBay, and in my case I got this on the Alibaba website, so I got it direct from China rather than some sort of middleman, and a lot of these aren't advertised from China on eBay. There's a number of them on eBay in America, but they've basically been sent from China to America, and then for me to then get them from America to England is basically putting lots of extra charges on and postage, so I was better off going direct and getting one from China. So that is the basic clock mechanism, and the fingers basically are push-ons, and you have a little brass nut which you screw the unit in. So basically you need about an 8mm hole on the front of the clock mechanism for this to fit, and it's quite simple. It basically runs with one AA battery, 1.5 volt. You mustn't put an alkali in, they've got to be a normal carbon zinc battery. An alkali is too powerful and will burn out the mechanism. Now the two blue wires coming out are basically your switch wires. Yeah, some people, I dare say, could use these as a little detonator mechanism if you were so inclined, but basically they're the switch wires, and they will, I presume they will create a chime noise on the hour, so you've basically got a 1 hour timer if you were to be using it for something else. Now so these switch wires then run off and connect to the two blue wires on this chiming unit. So you've got two blues which connect to the switch wires. There's no polarity specificness on these because it's just a pair of wire contacts inside, it's just a switch. So the two blue wires are soldered to there, and you put a bit of heat shrink on them or tape, and then the two black wires which come off connect to the speaker, and you basically house all that inside the back of your clock, which on something of this size isn't a problem. With this particular unit you can select 4 different chimes, with Westminster chimes being the 3rd one, and the 4th being, as it says, Bim Bam. So basically that's probably the closest to what's already in this. Anyway, so I'm going to get on with that. I'm going to take this unit out and see how it all goes in. It does come with some instructions, but the instructions are basically just for fitting the hands and the clock mechanism. It doesn't give you any detail about about the rest of it, but it's pretty simple stuff. Right, so the first part is to take the nut off on the bottom of the chime. It's probably a washer there, but it might stay. And let's see, this thing should slide out relatively easily if I will give it a little waggle. There we go. And that's the chimer off. So what I'll do is I will stick the nut back on there like so I don't lose any of it, and put that to one side. So that's opened up the space now, so we can get that clock out quite easily. So just push that little button on the side there, and the front opens up. Right, so what we have here on the front, I can actually do this with my fingers, but let's just move some clutter away off the table. Take the little pin out like so. Then there's a little washer, comes off, and then the fingers will slip off. Or should slip off with a little bit of a waggle. There we go. So now we just have to turn it round. And remove the two nailed nuts. Actually nailed screws. I was wrong. This is the first time I've undone this. You can see the clock's already coming loose. Now, you could do this and possibly strip this unit out and just clean it, because you could find that the reason the clock isn't functioning properly now is just that the mechanism needs a good cleaning, and after it being cleaned, then it will keep time again. But basically at the moment the mechanism isn't running very lubricated potentially. It's a bit dry, and that it needs some lubrication so that when you add the correct weight to the pendulum, it'll carry on swinging. Yeah, so basically that's it. That's the mechanism out. So I'm going to probably put that in a box and put it away for safekeeping, just in case one day that the unit goes back in. Now, the make can't actually see the maker's name on this. It's trying to chime. Nice mechanism. Anyway, I'll probably put it away in an old plastic ice cream container. Back round the front, and I've just tried the little brass nut which holds the mechanism in place, and it doesn't quite fit into the clock face hole on the front. So I'm going to use a round file, and I'm just going to gently enlarge the hole slightly until it works. Okay, so now that that fits, nice snug fit. In fact, so snug it's not easy to get out. Oh, dropped it on the floor as usual. Right, okay, pick that up in a moment. Now the other thing is the clock mechanism. Now sometimes these come with a round felt washer or rubber washer of some form, to basically cushion behind the clock, and this hasn't come with one. So what I've done is I've just got some double-sided tape which is slightly spongy, and I've stuck it on, and the arrangement you can see here. So I'm going to peel this backing off the tape and fit it on from the inside, then put the nut back on, and we'll see how it looks. This goes in with the battery at the base. That'd be good if I had one of these tools for tightening these collars up, you know, like a screwdriver with it's like a tube, basically a tube with two little bits sticking out for gripping, but you can use a pair of pliers and place it in like so if you're careful and tighten it up that way. So while I do that, I'm going to put the camera down and get on with the job. Okay, so once you've got that tightened up, then you can get your hands out. Not these hands, the pointers, whatever you want to call them. Fingers, hands. They just push on. So first you want to do the hour hand, which is obviously the short one, and then you'll push on the minute hand, and the second hand just pushes in to a hole over a small brass pin right in the center, and that locates. And once you've got that set up, or those all on, then you're going to have to try and establish exactly where the the striker switch is in relation to where the hands are. So obviously you're going to need to play around with the hands until you can hear the striker mechanism working. Now you could wire it all up and do it afterwards. That's probably a fairly easy way to do it. Or you can actually listen for a little click in the mechanism as the clock rotates past the hour point, the 12, and do it that way. Anyway, I'll get on with putting these fingers on. Okay, once all the fingers are attached, you've got to in the case of mine, it's got a beveled glass in it, so I've had to tinker around with the fingers to make sure that they pass each other and don't rub on the insides of the glass. I know the clock face needs cleaning. It's got a lot of patina, but in some ways that doesn't matter too much. It's basically being truthful to what it is. It's over 100 years old, so there's nothing wrong in having a little bit of wear. Particularly around here, you can see where people have probably been pushing the fingers over the years, putting it to 12 o'clock to make it chime and to set the chiming mechanism up correctly. So it's basically showing its age, which is quite good. So the mechanism's working now. I have actually set the fingers to just about the right time for when it should chime on the hour, and there's the mechanism, quite simple inside. It's possibly got a slight angle to it, but that doesn't really matter as long as the chime point is set correctly. Everything else will be all right. So the next things I'm going to have to do is set up the chiming mechanisms and a speaker mounting point. To do it very simply, for starters, you could just put this on with some double-sided tape or some blue tack, but I'm sure some better means of attaching it, fixing it down, can easily be worked out. But for the time being, I'll probably just put this onto the case inside with some blue tack, possibly just under here, so it's quite easy to mount it, and the wires will reach up quite well, and you'll be able to get at the switch gear. So basically, there's the switch for setting the modes of the clock chime, and there's a volume control, and that's a set button. Now, it could be that this one, when you set it for 12 o'clock, that it knows that it's 12 o'clock, and all the hours after that, it does a different chime setup. So it probably does one chime after the 12. And then at 2 it does 2 chimes, and so on, and it might even chime on the half hour, depending on how smart this thing is. So I'll find that out, because it doesn't tell me in the instructions. Okay, so that's the 2 wires soldered up, just twisted and soldered. So the next thing I need to do is slide up these heat shrinks and put them over the wire to insulate them. So once it's in the right spot, like so, I basically just use the side of the soldering iron to shrink it. But I'd really rather be using 2 hands while I do this. So again, I'm going to put the camera down. Okay, so that's the speaker soldered up, the wires, the trigger wires soldered and insulated with heat shrink. So that's the battery in. So all that remains now is, well, we should do some testing and see what it sounds like before we fit it all in, make sure it does chime. So if we push the set button, we should be able to test the chimes out. So that's Ave Maria. think that's a bit much personally. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7. 7 chimes, 7 bells. Okay. Let's put it to setting 2. Seven, 8. Okay. Maybe it's going to do 9, 6, 7, 8, 9. So what it's doing is, since I put the battery in, each time I push the set, it's ratcheting the chime up by 1 position. So basically I would have to set the clock hands to just after 9 now in order for it to be correct. Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, so basically it seems like I'm going to have to power this up at the correct time so that it corresponds with the clock. So I'll put this to the 4th position. Let's see if it does 10. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, okay, so that makes sense. So if I push this a few more times, I'll be able to get it to go round to 12. Or the corresponding time that I need to set it to. So basically I'll just keep pushing this until it's on the correct hour. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's easy enough. So I just need to do that and set the clock hands so that the next time it pulses, it'll trigger the correct hour. Okay, so I'll get on with sticking this on. So what I've done is I've put some double-sided tape on the back of the chime unit, and then I'll see what I can do with this. I might use some in fact I might use some of that plasticine or blue tack and just anchor that down, and that'll do for the time being. You could just put it down with a little blob of silicone or some hot glue. That would work fairly well. Okay. Okay, so that's it all done. I've just used the plasticine to anchor the speaker down. At least that'll do for the time being, and I've used another bit of it just to tidy the wiring up the side here, and the battery box is mounted with the double-sided tape, so we're all good. I've set the clock, I've set the chiming unit so that the next time it should come on. In fact, I haven't done it correct. I'm 1 hour out. The next time it'll come on should be 2 o'clock. So if I push the button one more time, I'm hoping that this will do 1 chime. And I've turned the volume down on the unit a bit so it's not too loud. Yeah, there, 1 chime. So that's correct. So next time it gets initiated by the switch wires, it should be 2 o'clock. And so that's it all done. Didn't take very long. The unit does tick, you can hear it. So that's not too bad. Fairly happy with that.